everyone, this is Will from Beijing, China, and welcome to this brand new and important episode of The Missing Piece. If you follow the news lately, not only the world continues to watch the ongoing tension between Russia and Ukraine. However, this year, for the country of China, and also it's a significant milestone. Come to think of it, from this economic perspective, China this year is going to officially celebrate the 10-year anniversary for one of the major and economic international projects. It's called Belt and Road Initiative, or also most people would say it, a Belt and Road Project. Again, if you follow the report, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement has come into force for one of the critical countries in Asia, which is Malaysia recently. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to invite our special guest, and his name is Tess Hu. And Tess Hu is the Chief Executive Officer of He-Won International Business Consulting, and he has been living in China for many years, and of course previously that he traveled internationally between China specifically and Malaysia to offering consultation not only to business in Malaysia but also across the world. Tess, welcome to The Missing Piece.
Thank you, Will, for that kind introduction.
You're welcome, Tess. Absolutely. Now, let's get to the question right away. Again, as I mentioned before, Malaysia joined one of the critical economic partnership, but the full name is called Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Can you share with us a little bit how significant is it for Malaysia to join this economic package or economic partnership, and what does that look like in the long run?
Well, I guess a little bit background on the RCEP. The RCEP is the new economic partnership that was put in place after the TPP was kind of like discarded by the US, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And so after that was not in effect anymore, that's where the RCEP came about, and Malaysia became ratified in the RCEP as of March the 18th. In as far as how important the RCEP is to Malaysia, I guess the RCEP consists of the ASEAN countries, the Southeast Asian countries, of which one of the founding members was Malaysia. And of course, as we see the rise of Asia in this 21st century, I believe that it's very important for Malaysia to be part of the RCEP, as well as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Of course, Malaysia and China has historical ties that go back many hundred years. Yeah? Malacca, which is part of Malaysia, is one of the most important trading posts about 600-700 years ago, of which one of the Chinese voyages, Zheng He, also came to Malaysia, Malacca, in the early 15th century. Yeah. So China and Malaysia has a very long trading history, and its cultures are also interconnected. Because in Malaysia, most of the Chinese population migrated to Malaysia from either Fujian, Guangdong, or Hainan from about 100 to 120 years ago. So, like for myself, I'm also Chinese by ethnicity. My ancestors are from Guangdong and Fujian. So, as a result, I think this coming back to having this RCEP is very important to Malaysia, because Malaysia is a small country, only 34 million people, and we are unable to afford to negotiate good trade terms on our own. But China has been Malaysia's largest trade partner for the last 10 years, at least the last 10 years. and its trade between China and Malaysia has exceeded USD 100 billion since 2015, I believe. But of course, with the pandemic and other things that I play, the amount probably is reduced now, but Malaysia is still the largest single country within Southeast Asia to have trading ties with China. And of course, the ties between Malaysia and China go way back to 1974. Malaysia was the first country in Southeast Asia to establish diplomatic ties with China. So as a result, there's a lot of friendship, there's a lot of goodwill between Malaysia and China that stretches back so many years, almost 40 over years, almost 50 years. We'll celebrate the 50th anniversary of diplomatic ties in 2 years' time in 2024. So to answer your question, it is very vital and for Malaysia to be a part of this RCEP.
Tess, one thing, of course, that many things that you mentioned, and I couldn't agree with you more, but one thing that we can trace all the way back, and you're right, that the relationship, especially this economic partnership between China and Malaysia, can actually be dated back years ago. And even before the pandemic, and we know that there are many international commodities were being transferred and from China to Malaysia and also from Malaysia to across the world. But again, let's go back to the beginning is something that really caught the attention of this market today is called a free trade agreement. I think, Tez, again, you as a business consultant, and you have a better idea in terms of explaining and understanding this. What does that mean today once Malaysia got admitted into this RCEP partnership? It actually boosted this free trade agreement. So number one, what does that mean, free trade agreement? And number two, and again, how does that benefit Malaysia in a more specific way? And it's not just about business. And I think we're going to look beyond the picture a little bit more, right?
I think first and foremost, whenever there's a free trade agreement in place, of course, trade between countries always have some certain amount of tariffs or certain amount of taxes and levied upon the goods that are being imported or exported. But being part of the RCEP, of course, there's a list of goods and services that will be over time be given preferential tax rate tariffs, and some may be tax-free. So I guess what that's, in the sense of the word, going forward, what it means is that cost of doing business and the availability of goods and services between both countries over time will become more affordable. And of course, with all this tariffs reductions and tax reductions, it will also be a catalyst for more trade and more businesses, particularly, I believe, SME business, small and medium-sized enterprises, that will have more interaction between both the countries. And it also augurs well because Malaysia is one of the countries outside of China with a large Chinese population, and also the population of Malaysia. A lot of them are also learning Chinese, and language will not be a barrier. So, and then there's cultural similarities. So in that sense, going forward, the ratification of Malaysia into RCEP is a positive step forward. There are already existing many Chinese companies that are already operating in Malaysia, notably all the big companies, the phone companies like Huawei, like Vivo, Oppo, and Haidilao. And you've got so many Chinese companies that is already entrenched into the Malaysian economy. But with this new RCEP deal, I foresee that there'll be much more SMEs that will go in between both the countries. So it's a step forward.
Ted, it's so interesting that you just used the word called it's a step forward. Based on the report, 2020, I would say that was one of the devastating years for human history, because that was basically the climax of the entire pandemic. And countries such as China and suffered greatly, especially for private enterprises, small business owners, and it really cornered them in a way that we have to learn, or the world had to learn how to survive in the midst of the limitations. Now, again, based on the report, in the year of 2020, China was reported to gain these economic advantages by 3%. So in other words, when the world was slowing down, China was actually trying to move forward. Now, Ted, before we get to Belt and Road Initiative, I want to ask you, how does China's this economic continuation, development, benefits countries such as Malaysia? Given this fact that you mentioned the countries in ASEAN, we're looking at Cambodia, we're looking at Vietnam and Philippines, and of course Malaysia, all these countries. So how do you think that China's economic growth could actually benefit other countries, especially the neighboring economic partners in Asia?
Well, I guess, of course, first and foremost, China, of course, managed to get through and recover very quickly because of the strict measures that were taken into effect. I was living through the pandemic. I was in the northeast at the time in Shenyang, but things got into control very fast. I still remember the time when it was the second day of Chinese New Year and this news just broke out, and then but very soon, within I would say 3 to 4 months, things were back to a new kind of like normal, and things were under control, and that enabled economic growth. No doubt. It was a setback. China only grew by 3%, but still, the base is huge, and 3% is huge growth. 2020, given the circumstances. And I think all this, and what the pandemic really did was accelerate the adoption of digitalization of everything. Yeah, and this is something that China has done very well. In addition to that, of course, there are many industries that suffered. Of course, there are many industries that took advantage and pivoted and moved ahead. And how that would benefit countries like Malaysia and other countries, I would think that the learnings of pandemic control measures and so as a result, I would say that all these learnings that China has learned is something that it can share with the world, especially with the Belt and Road countries, of which now there's about 150. 4 or 5 years ago, there was only 65 or 67 countries, back in 2017. 5 years now, the number has doubled. Yeah. When Argentina came for the Winter Olympics, they signed in as the 144th country.
That's right.
In the Belt and Road. And now nearly about 150. So with 150 signed, you are talking about 3/4 of the world is on the Belt and Road bandwagon, if you will. So all these learnings, I guess, with China's leading the world, I would say, in terms of controlling this pandemic, that will allow China to have a great influence going forward post-pandemic, as we transition into a new normal. And all these learnings can, of course, be transferred. And over the course of the last 40 years, we have seen China accelerating her progress. Another area is the alleviating of poverty. Yeah, we just finished the 2 sessions, and one of the big highlights was the alleviation of poverty.
That's right.
Over the last 10 years, 98 million people have been lifted out of poverty, and now it's almost, considered eradicated. So those are learnings that I guess China can share with the world. I mean, aside from trade, aside from economic issues, there's a whole lot more, I guess, that can be shared with the world.
You know, Tez, let's talk about one of the issues that we addressed at the beginning. It's the Belt and Road Initiative. You know, again, as I mentioned in the intro, this year, the year of 2022, actually is the 10th year anniversary for the project. You know, at the beginning, China was having, you know, if I can be honest, China was facing major hurdles in terms of inviting international allies or partners to join this project, because initially it was rather difficult for many country leaders to grasp what the project is about. That's number one. Number two is, you know, nobody could predict 5 or 6 or 10 years later that the pandemic would actually take a toll on the world. So I know Malaysia, again, is a strategic economic partner with China. So can you share with us a little bit that how does Malaysia link to China under this Belt and Road Initiative? And meanwhile, how does that benefit Malaysia in the long run, especially in terms of this domestic and international economic connection? Go ahead.
I think, of course, Malaysia was one of the earlier countries to have joined the Belt and Road Initiative. Yes, you are right to say that initially it was pretty difficult to convince people to join in the Belt and Road Initiative. And of course, over the years, you know, I was actually involved in a 2016 event where we held a Belt and Road, or back then we called it a One Belt, One Road summit. Yeah? And we had people from, because Malaysia and China, we have a industrial park in Guangxi. It's called the CMQIP, which is the China-Malaysia Qingzhou Industrial Park. And similarly in Malaysia, there's a MCKIP, which is the Malaysia-China Kuantan Industrial Park. So it's a bilateral kind of like exchange, and of course back then in 2016 it was a good time to hold it, because in 2015 Malaysia for the first time, with Malaysia and China for the first time breached the threshold of US 100 billion of trade both ways. Yeah. And back then, and I believe even right now, there's a trade deficit that is also there. But of course, Malaysia plays a very strategic role in China's development, and China into Malaysia as well. Yeah, and so there's this industrial park that's an agreement, and then over and on top of that, Malaysian companies have always invested very early on into China. In fact, one of the first, not one of the first, the first 5-star hotel in China when Deng Xiaoping opened up China was built by a Malaysian. It is the China World Mall, yeah, and in cooperation with Guomao. So and their partnership runs to today. So the ties really between China and Malaysia go a long way. And of course, going forward, there's a lot of skill sharing and learning to be learned between both countries.
As the whole world is continuing watching the tension or the conflict between Russia and Ukraine right now, you know, we are coming into almost the 4th week. It's been a month, and the devastation should not be underestimated. But meanwhile, people are looking at the countries in Asia, especially in Southeast Asia. How do you think that this ongoing conflict could or might have impacted on the nation on Asia, especially in Southeast Asia, country as Vietnam, Cambodia, Philippines, and Laos and Malaysia. So you as a Malaysian and you as a business consultant, how do you think that this war might have impact on the countries such as Malaysia?
Of course, the war we're already seeing its initial impacts in terms of petrol gas prices rising to unprecedented levels. In China, it's breaching 9 yuan per liter. In the US, we're talking about $5 per gallon. Of course, and then of course the immediate effects is that countries in Europe, which is very dependent on Russian gas, like Germany, half of their gas necessities are from Russia. Now it's cut off. So given the situation, I think of course the initial effects of the price of the war, I believe it's not so much felt at that moment in Southeast Asia as of yet. But of course, the longer the war continues, then of course the effects of it has to trickle down. Yeah, we are seeing hyperinflation happening in the US. Recently the news reports that US is having the highest inflation numbers in 40 years. Yeah, and of course in Europe things will be the same. And then in addition to inflation, the countries that are bordering Ukraine, like Poland, like Hungary, like Moldova, and these Eastern European countries, they have to deal with the influx of over 2.5 million war refugees at the moment.
That's right.
And the number continues to rise. Right? So I would say that, of course, the effects will be felt in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, but at the present moment, the only thing that we see is probably in the areas of petrol prices. But because Malaysia is herself a petrol producing country with subsidies, so currently the prices are still under control. But of course, over and above the initial setbacks and shocks that are placed into the global system, you will see that, of course, as we continue, because the whole world is based on the SWIFT financial system.
That's right.
And now, with all these big companies pulling out of Russia, with them saying that they will pull Russia off the SWIFT system, so this also gives an opportunity for China itself with its CIPS system, and of course the recently launched digital renminbi, the ECNY. So are we going to see a change in terms of a new world reserve currency? We don't know. It's too early to tell. But of course, if push comes to shove and Russia really gets taken out of the SWIFT system, this will give the opportunity for the CIPS system that China has developed to have a test bed. Yeah, because a lot of countries already have bilateral settlement agreements. China and Russia already has it in place since at least 8 years ago. Yeah, and of course the world, because SWIFT is in place because the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. But are we going to see a change going forward? Yeah, we don't know. And then over and top of this SWIFT and financial system, there's now the rise of digital currency and cryptocurrency that is also coming on stream very fast over these past 2 years. So that's another thing that is thrown into the mix. So it'll be interesting to see the couple of years going ahead, and of course the whole world is also in anticipation that China will within the next 5 to 6 years be the largest GDP country in the world. Not on a per capita basis, but on a total country basis. On a per capita basis, China has still a long way to go to catch up with the more mature economies. But then it's already, it's a given that it will have to happen at one point.